One quiet morning in June, in the year 793, monks at Lindisfarne Monastery were living peaceful lives. Lindisfarne was an island near England, a place for prayer and study. It held many valuable things: gold, silver, and holy books. The monks did not know their lives were about to change forever. Suddenly, ships appeared from the sea. They were long and had shallow bottoms. These ships could go into water where other ships could not. People called the Vikings were on these ships. They attacked the monastery without warning. Some monks ran, trying to save small treasures. Others stayed, too scared or knowing there was no escape. The Vikings were very violent. They took the gold and silver. They killed some monks and threw others into the sea. Young, strong monks were taken as slaves. The Vikings burned what they could not carry. When they left, they had not just gold, but also a new idea. Christian Europe had many rich and weak places. This attack on Lindisfarne shocked everyone in Europe. It showed that a new, dangerous time had begun. But why did the Vikings start these attacks now? What changes in their home country, Scandinavia, made them leave and become raiders? What made them so bold and so violent? This terrible event was only the beginning. It opened a long story, almost 300 years of Viking power. This saga will end with a big fight for the throne of England, a battle we will tell you about in Chapter 8. The Vikings were not just wild people. They were clever and had big plans. But before they could build a great power, they needed something special. A new way to travel, a technology that let them strike anywhere, anytime. What was this secret invention that made them masters of the sea? 2. The first people. The time when Vikings started their journeys happened for a few important reasons in Scandinavia. In the 700s, the climate changed and it became warmer. This meant that farmers could grow more food and the population grew a lot. More and more people lived in the valleys and along the coasts of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. But there was a problem. There was not enough land for everyone. Often only the oldest son in a family got land. Younger sons had no farms and no clear future. They needed to find new ways to live and get rich. Also, strong leaders started to make bigger kingdoms. Men like Harald Fairhair in Norway gathered more power. This was a time of change and sometimes fighting. Many free people did not want to lose their independence to these new kings. They chose to leave their homes and seek their own fortunes in other lands, where they could be free and gain wealth on their own terms. These ambitious men became the first people to venture far from Scandinavia. It is important to understand what the word Viking truly means. It was not a name for all people from Scandinavia. Instead, it was a job or an activity. The Old Norse word vikingur meant someone who went on a sea journey, often to raid or trade. So not every person from these northern lands was a Viking. The people who took on this job came from different groups in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. They were specialists in sea travel and searching for wealth. When you think of a Viking, you might imagine a fierce warrior wearing a helmet with horns. However, this popular idea is wrong. No Viking warrior ever wore such a helmet in battle. This image came from the 1870s when a costume designer made it for a German opera. He was inspired by very old helmets from the Bronze Age, which were nearly 2,000 years before the Viking era. These older helmets were likely used for special ceremonies, not for fighting. Many people today, especially in Scandinavian countries, work to show that this myth is not true. The real Vikings were much more complex than simple fighters. They were driven by clear goals. They wanted money, new lands, more power, and honor for themselves and their families. Their society had many layers and rules. We will learn more about their social structure in Chapter 4. These powerful motivations were common to many people in that era. But their amazing success was not just from their will. It all came down to one powerful piece of technology. This invention was a marvel of engineering that gave them a very strong advantage. 3. The best ships. The Vikings had a special tool. It was their ship, called the Longship. This ship was very important. It was like a machine that helped their whole way of life. The Longship let them travel far and wide, making them masters of the sea. The secret of the Longship was how it was built. Its design was called clinker-built. This meant the wooden planks of the ship overlapped each other like roof tiles. These planks were strongly fastened with iron nails. This way of building made the ship both strong and flexible. It could bend a little with the waves, so it did not break in rough ocean storms. The overlapping planks also kept the water out very well. The Longship was also special because of its shape. It had a very shallow bottom, only about 3 feet deep. This meant it could sail not only on the open ocean, but also far up small rivers. Vikings could travel deep into new lands, surprising people who lived far from the sea. A longship could even be pulled over land if needed, connecting different waterways. But how did Vikings travel across the vast North Atlantic Ocean without a compass? This was a big mystery. Some stories talk about sunstones, special crystals that could show where the sun was, even on cloudy days. Scientists have shown some crystals could possibly do this. However, we have no clear proof that Vikings actually used these stones. Instead, Vikings used smart, practical methods. On sunny days, they used the sun's position. They watched the stars at night. They also learned about nature. They knew where certain birds flew, as these birds often stayed near land. They watched whales, which also stayed close to shore. Even clouds hanging over distant islands could show them the way. Vikings passed this knowledge from older sailors to younger ones. This deep understanding of the world around them was their real navigation tool. The longship was more than just a boat. It was the heart of their world. It allowed them to raid, trade, and explore, driving their whole civilization. But a great ship is nothing without strong people to sail it and fight from it. Next, we will look at the Viking people themselves and the strict rules that shaped their brave warriors. 4. The Big Family. Viking society was very clear about who was important. It had 3 main groups or classes. At the top were the powerful jarls. These were the nobles and rich landowners. Jarls controlled much land and many goods. They told people what to do, organized raids, and kept order. They also served the king. A jarl's power came from his land, his wealth, and the warriors who followed him. Next were the Carls. These were free farmers and skilled workers. Most Vikings belonged to this group. A Carl owned his own farm or worked on land. He had important legal rights. He could carry weapons and speak at the local meeting. This meeting was called the Thing. At the Thing, people talked about problems and made decisions for the community. The Carl's right to speak and make decisions at the Thing was a core part of their legal system. They also had to fight for their jarl when called and pay taxes. At the very bottom were the thralls or slaves. Thralls had no rights. They owned nothing and could be bought or sold like objects. People became thralls if they were born into slavery, captured in wars, or sometimes because of debt. Their lives were hard. However, some thralls could earn small amounts of money and, in rare cases, even buy their freedom. The Vikings took many thralls from other lands, and selling them was a big part of their economy. While Viking societies seemed to be run mostly by men, women had surprising power and freedom. They could own property and even ask for a divorce, which was rare in those times. Women managed their households and often controlled money and goods when men were away raiding. Old stories and things found by archaeologists show that some women were very important leaders. For a long time, historians did not fully understand this. The full story of women warriors and female leaders will be told in the next chapter. All of Viking life, from the jarls to the thralls, was held together by a strong belief system. The Vikings thought that a powerful force called Weird or Fate controlled everything. 3 special women, called the Norns, wove the future for everyone, even the gods. This meant that what would happen would happen. A Viking could not change his fate. This belief made them fearless in battle. If death was already decided, then the only thing that mattered was how you faced it. To die bravely in a fight was the best way to die. This dark idea about fate explained why Vikings fought without fear. To truly understand them, you must know how they thought about death. 5. Strong women and gods. In the last chapter, we talked about how women in Viking society held surprising power. Now we have clear proof from old sites. For example, a very rich ship burial called Oseberg was found in Norway. Inside, archaeologists found 2 women. They were buried with many valuable things, like fine sledges, textiles, and ornate wooden objects. This shows they were very important leaders or rulers in their time, not just ordinary people. More recently, in 2017, scientists looked at a warrior's grave in Berka, Sweden. This grave held many weapons, horses, and a game board used for strategy. DNA tests showed that the person buried there was a woman. She was a high-ranking warrior and a commander. This important finding proves that some Viking women were not just in charge of homes, but also fought in battles, even leading others. These strong women were part of a society driven by a special way of thinking. This was about their gods and their view of death. What made Vikings so fearless in battle? It was their belief in weird, which means inescapable fate. They believed that their entire life path, including how and when they would die, was already decided. 3 powerful female beings called the Norns wove the thread of every person's life. Nothing anyone did could change what was fated to happen. Even the gods could not escape their word. This belief might seem like it would make people feel sad or give up. But for the Vikings, it was the opposite. If your death was already set, then the only thing you could control was how you faced it. Dying bravely in battle was the most honorable death. It was much better than dying of old age or sickness in your bed. This idea made Viking warriors incredibly brave. They did not fear death because they knew it would come when it was meant to come. They only cared about fighting with courage and earning a good name that people would remember after they were gone. With this strong mindset and their excellent ships, the Vikings began to explore and expand across the known world. They did not all go the same way. The Vikings took two very different paths. One group sailed to the east and built a great empire. The other group sailed west, past the edge of the map, and discovered a whole new world. 6. New homes in the east and west. After their many successful attacks, the Vikings started to look for new homes. They traveled in two main directions, east and west. Some Vikings, mostly from Sweden, went east. They were called the Rus. They used big rivers like the Volga and the Dnieper to travel deep into new lands. Along these rivers, they started small towns that grew into important cities. These cities, like Ladoga, Novgorod, and Kiev, helped build what would later become Russia. The Rus traded valuable furs and amber. They exchanged these goods for silver, spices, and fine silks. This trade connected them to rich cities far away, like Baghdad and Constantinople. It was a very profitable trade, but also full of danger. They also took people as slaves and sold them in these eastern markets. At the same time, other Vikings, mainly from Denmark and Norway, sailed west. They landed in England and France. In England, Danish Vikings fought and settled in a large area. This part of England became known as the Danelaw, where Norse laws were used. In France, Vikings often attacked important cities. In one famous event, Viking ships surrounded Paris. The Frankish king, Charles the Bald, paid a huge amount of silver to the Vikings to make them leave. This payment was called Danegeld. Many Vikings stayed in these western lands. Over time, some settled in France, and their families became known as the Normans. But not all Vikings wanted to settle in known lands. Some brave sailors heard tales of places even farther away, past the edge of the world they knew. They decided to chase these stories, sailing into the unknown, beyond the ice and fog, to find a new world. 7. A new world. The Vikings pushed far west across the wide, cold ocean. Around the year 985, a famous Viking named Eric the Red sailed from Iceland. He was exiled because of a quarrel. Eric found a new land and named it Greenland. It sounds green, but large parts were covered in ice. Still, along the coasts, there were narrow fjords with some grass. People from Iceland needed more land, and Eric's reports made them interested in this harsh new place. Many settlers followed him. Eric the Red's son, Leif Erikson, was also a brave sailor. Around the year 1000, Leif decided to sail even further west from Greenland. He had heard stories of lands beyond the fog. Leif and his crew crossed the rough North Atlantic waters and found a new continent. They were the first Europeans to step onto North American land. Leif named this new place Vinland. We are not sure if this means wineland because of grapes or pasture land for animals. They built a small camp there, which sagas call Leifsbudir, or Leif's Booths. Today, we know for sure that Vikings built a settlement at Lonso Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. Old wood found there shows they were present around the year 1021. However, the Viking dream of a new home in Vinland did not last. Their settlement was small and did not stay for long. One big reason was that they met the local people who already lived there, the indigenous peoples. These meetings often turned into fights, and the Vikings faced strong resistance. Also, the land in Vinland was not good for the type of farming they did in Iceland and Greenland. They needed specific fields, and Vinland did not have them. Most importantly, it was too far from their homes in Greenland and Scandinavia. It was very hard to send ships with more people and supplies across such a huge ocean. Without enough new people and things, the small Viking group could not make a lasting colony. So, after a short time, the Vikings left Vinland and sailed back home. Their amazing journey west had reached its furthest point. They had explored lands far beyond what others knew, but they could not truly make them their own. Meanwhile, back in their homelands in Europe, the Viking world was changing quickly. A new religion was arriving, and with it, a final great war was about to begin. This would bring the age of the Vikings to a bloody end. 8. The end of an age. The Viking world began a big change. Many Viking kings started to accept Christianity. They did this not only for faith, but also for practical reasons. Christian kingdoms in Europe were powerful, and being Christian helped Scandinavian rulers make friends and trade. Kings like Harald Bluetooth of Denmark around 960 CE declared his people Christian. King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway also pushed for Christianity, changing the old pagan ways. This helped their lands join the larger European family. The year 1066 marks a very important end. On September 25th, an English army led by King Harold Godwinson fought a big battle at Stamford Bridge. They faced a powerful Norwegian Viking army led by King Harald Hardrada, a legendary warrior. King Harold's army won, and Harald Hardrada died. This was the last great Viking invasion of England, a final fierce roar from the north. But King Harold's victory was short-lived. Just 3 weeks later, on October 14th, a different army came. William of Normandy, a powerful duke from France, invaded England. William was a descendant of Vikings. His great-grandfather, Rollo, was a Norse raider who had settled in France. William's Norman army fought King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. William won, becoming the new king of England and transforming its future. So the Viking Age, as an era of big raids and new settlements, came to an end. But the Vikings did not just disappear. They had become part of other cultures. The Normans who conquered England were like Vikings who had changed, adopting French language and Christian faith. In England, the Danelaw areas where Vikings had settled still showed their influence in laws and customs. The Vikings left a big mark on our world. Many common English words today come from Old Norse, such as sky, window, anger, take, get, and give. Their old ways of making laws and holding community meetings, called things, also influenced how European countries developed their governance. They were more than just destroyers. They were world shapers who started new cities and changed languages and laws. Their long journey shaped much of what we know today. What part of the Vikings' hidden legacy do you find most surprising?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.